Hello, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Grab a seat, take a breath, this one doesn't begin the way you think it will. I regret every day with you. That was how it started. No build-up. No warning. Not even eye contact. Just those 7 words. Crisp. Surgical. Dropped on me while she was scrolling through her phone, halfway through a bite of dry toast. I didn't flinch. My stomach did something weird, like it was bracing for an earthquake that had already passed. My hand was still hovering over my coffee mug when I replied, just as quietly. Then let this be the last one. I stood up, took off my ring, and tossed it onto her plate. It landed face down in the strawberry jam. I didn't shout. I didn't ask why. I didn't even look back. I left the apartment with only my hoodie and the house keys. I left my phone. I left the silence. I walked for 6 hours. Through empty streets, across the overpass, past the boarded-up bookstore where she used to make me read poems out loud. I ended up in the stairwell of a parking garage, sitting alone, the metal steps freezing through my jeans. I cried. Not loudly. Not with drama. Just quiet, pitiful sobs that didn't echo because that stairwell didn't care. No one did. And that should have been the worst of it. But exactly 7 days later, at 6:18 p.m. the buzzer rang at the front door of the rundown apartment I was borrowing from a coworker. And standing on the other side of the glass was her best friend, holding a manila folder in one hand and a look in her eyes I hadn't seen since the funeral of my father. She mouthed the words, "Please let me in." And that's where the truth began. Not with my wife. Not with the fight. But with the folder. I didn't open the door right away. Something about seeing her on the other side of the glass, Marcia, my wife's best friend of over 15 years, stirred something cold in my gut. She was the kind of person who never dropped by unannounced. Meticulous. Controlled. Her showing up like this, in the rain, without calling ahead, without even texting, it wasn't casual. It was intentional. I finally buzzed her in, mostly out of habit. By the time she got to the 3rd floor landing, she was out of breath, soaked from the drizzle outside, and clutching the folder like it was radioactive. Her eyes met mine, and they looked tired, like she hadn't slept. I opened the door wider. She didn't say hi. She just walked straight past me, dropped the folder on the dusty coffee table, and sat down on the old couch like she might collapse. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You already are," I said. We both stared at the folder for a few seconds like it was breathing. I didn't know what to say, and the silence stretched until she finally broke it. "She's not who you think she is, Lowell." My knees locked, my heart stumbling in its rhythm. I hadn't heard my name said with that kind of sincerity in weeks. Months, maybe. "I know that now," I replied. She told me herself. With toast in her mouth. Marcia's lips twitched, almost like a laugh tried to escape, but she choked it down. Instead, she leaned forward and tapped the folder with 2 fingers. "I found this in her guest room drawer last week. I didn't take it then. I didn't want to believe what I saw. But then she said something yesterday, something that scared me." I sat down across from her, my hands clenched between my knees. She said she was planning to leave the country. With someone. Soon. That hit like a shot of ice water down my spine. Ellery hadn't just thrown our marriage in the trash, she was planning an escape route. But that didn't track. Why would she suddenly pack up and run? And with who? I reached for the folder. My fingers hovered just above the edge, and Marcia grabbed my wrist. "Lowell, before you open it, promise me something." I looked up. Her eyes weren't tired anymore, they were scared. "Whatever you read in there, don't go to her. Not yet. Don't confront her. Just, give it 24 hours. You need to understand the whole picture." I didn't promise, not really. But I nodded, because I had no idea what was inside and because some irrational part of me still wanted to believe this was all just a mistake. That maybe Ellery was just burned out. Or lost. Or angry. But then I opened the folder. And any fantasy I had left about who she was shattered in two. Inside were printouts, screenshots of messages, emails, financial statements, travel confirmations. A second phone bill tied to a number I didn't recognize. There were flights booked in her name to Portugal. 2 tickets. Paid in full. And buried in the back of the stack, was a photo. It wasn't graphic. It wasn't even intimate. But it might as well have been a sledgehammer to the chest. Ellery was sitting at a cafe table in what looked like Charleston, laughing. Holding hands with someone. A man I didn't recognize. Except. Marcia did. "That's Logan," she said. "My husband's brother." Her voice was quiet. Bitter. "She's been planning this with him for over a year. I only found out because she accidentally airdropped something to my iPad. My world didn't feel like it was crumbling anymore. It felt like it had already fallen, and now I was just standing in the dust, wondering what came next. But I hadn't seen the final paper yet. It was a handwritten note. In Ellery's familiar cursive. "If everything goes as planned, he'll never know until I'm gone. I deserve this new life. No more pretending." And in that moment, I realized she wasn't just leaving me. She was erasing me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the same spot for hours, the folder wide open on the coffee table like a gaping wound, while Marcia quietly paced the room. Every time I tried to put the pieces together, Ellery, Logan, the flights, the note, I hit a wall of disbelief. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditation. This wasn't a spontaneous affair or some desperate act of emotional confusion. It was a plan. A cold, strategic extraction. She hadn't just fallen for someone else. She had removed me from the story she wanted to tell going forward. And it hurt in a way I didn't even know was possible. Not like a breakup. More like a funeral for someone who was still alive, but you weren't invited. Marcia eventually fell asleep on the couch, using her coat as a pillow. Around 4 a.m. I finally stood, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water I couldn't bring myself to drink. I just stared at it, hands shaking, eyes swollen. That's when I saw the blinking light on my work phone, one I hadn't checked in days. A voicemail. I pressed play. It was my principal, saying my recent absences were concerning, and that they'd need to have a conversation if I didn't show up Monday. I almost laughed. My life was caving in, and the biggest concern on record was whether I'd be back to teach the scarlet letter to a bunch of 8th graders who didn't care about symbolism. I ended the message and stood there, motionless. Until something occurred to me, something I hadn't noticed before. In one of the screenshots Marcia had shown me, Ellery had written to Logan, "He still thinks we're on the same phone plan." Idiot. At the time, I was too overwhelmed to think about it. But now. Something clicked. I hadn't logged into our shared account since the breakup. I didn't even know she had changed the password. But I still had her old backup email address saved in my notes. It was worth a try. I logged in through the carrier's website, and to my surprise, it worked. Apparently, she hadn't thought I'd bother. Maybe she assumed I'd just spiral and disappear. And I almost did. Until I saw the call logs. That unfamiliar number, the one connected to that second phone, wasn't just used for Logan. It was used for someone else too. Regularly. Sometimes daily. And the strangest part. That number had an address attached to it in the account's contact list. Not in Charleston. Not Portugal. It was local. Very local. The address was just 7 miles from where we used to live. A small house in a rundown neighborhood I'd driven past 100 times without ever paying attention. Now I couldn't stop staring at it. What was Ellery doing coordinating with two people this close to home while planning an international escape with Logan? Was he even aware of the second number? Was she playing both of them? And that's when something darker settled in. If this was a scheme to erase me, to quietly vanish before I knew what happened, why the need for two phones, two lovers, two addresses? And more importantly, how long had this been happening without anyone saying a word? I walked back into the living room, still holding the phone, and sat down hard enough to wake Marcia. She stirred, blinked at the ceiling, and sat up slowly. "I think there's someone else," I said. Her eyes widened. "Besides Logan?" I nodded. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, like she already knew this rabbit hole wasn't near the bottom yet. "Who?" "I don't know yet," I said, tapping the address into my GPS, "but I'm going to find out." Marcia hesitated. "You promised me 24 hours. I nodded, I said. "I never promised." And with that, I grabbed my keys, ignored the headache forming behind my eyes, and stepped into the early morning fog, heading for the house that would unravel everything even further. What I found there was not what I expected. Not even close. I don't remember most of the drive. Just the blur of trees outside the passenger window, the empty streets painted orange by the early sun, and the voice in my head repeating the same line over and over: what if this has nothing to do with Logan at all? When I reached the neighborhood, it didn't look like the kind of place that held life-changing secrets. Just a quiet, peeling subdivision with rusted mailboxes and overgrown lawns. The kind of place where you'd expect to see wind chimes and birthday party balloons tied to sagging porch railings. But this house was different. No number. No name. Just a red door with chipping paint and closed blinds on every window. I parked 2 houses down and sat with the engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel like it might try to get away. I watched the house for nearly 10 minutes. Nothing moved. No dog barked. No lights flicked on. It was like the whole building was holding its breath. Eventually, I got out and walked toward it. The silence around me was deafening. I half expected to hear Ellery's voice through a cracked window, or maybe Logan's laugh, but there was nothing. Just the faint buzz of a nearby transformer and my own heart kicking the inside of my chest. I didn't knock. I told myself I would, but when I reached the front door, I noticed it, barely visible against the rust-colored wood, a slip of paper, taped from the inside. I leaned in. It was a name. A single name scribbled in blue ink. Emmett. That meant nothing to me. No relatives, no coworkers, no friends I could connect to it. But the fact that there was a name suddenly made this very, very real. This wasn't some abandoned hideout or safe house. Someone was living here. I was about to knock when the door creaked open. Just 2 inches. Enough to startle me back a step. And then came the voice, deep, slow, and completely unfamiliar. "You should leave now. She's not here." I froze. Who are you?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. The door opened a little wider. A man stood in the shadows, early 40s maybe, wearing a faded army jacket and jeans. His eyes were calm but exhausted, like he hadn't had a full night's sleep since the last decade. "You're Lowell," he said. Not a question. A statement. My stomach bottomed out. How do you know who I am?" He stepped forward, fully visible now. He wasn't threatening. Just sad. "I'm Emmett." I told her this would blow up eventually. "Her?" I asked. "You mean Ellery?" He nodded, stepping aside. "Come in. You deserve the full picture." Everything inside me told me to run. But I didn't. I walked inside. The house was bare. Not messy. Not lived in. Just empty. A couch, a table with no chairs, and a single photo on the wall, Ellery and Emmett. Arm in arm. Smiling. Like they'd known each other for years. "You've never heard of me because that's how she wanted it," Emmett said, walking past me toward the kitchen. "We met before you and Ellery were even engaged. I was her past she didn't talk about. Except I was never really past anything. She kept me just close enough." I swallowed hard. "So, you're telling me she's been seeing you this whole time? Along with Logan?" He turned and shook his head slowly. "No. Not the whole time. It was more complicated than that. Ellery doesn't just cheat. She curates lives. She builds realities depending on what she needs from each person. You were stability. Logan was risk. I was the one who knew the truth and kept quiet. I couldn't process what I was hearing. My knees felt weak. I sat down on the edge of the couch and tried to find oxygen in a room that suddenly felt too small. Emmett walked over, placed an envelope in my hand, and sat across from me. "I found this in her suitcase last month. A printed itinerary and a letter addressed to you. She didn't plan to give it to you until the day after she left the country. You were supposed to find it too late." I opened it. Inside was a single handwritten note. "Lowell. If you're reading this, it means I'm already gone. I know this will hurt, but I'm choosing the life I should have had. I stayed too long pretending I could be someone I'm not. You were kind. You were safe. But I need to feel alive. Please don't chase me. Ellery." There was no apology. No remorse. Just a farewell designed to sterilize her conscience. And right then, as the last part of me that still hoped this was just a mistake finally died, Emmett looked me in the eye and said something I'll never forget. "She's not done, Lowell. Not even close. She's just relocating the game." I left Emmett's house with the envelope still in my pocket and a lead weight where my chest used to be. I didn't say much after reading the note. What was there to say? "Thanks for the psychological grenade. Tell her I said hi." Emmett didn't expect anything. He just nodded once before closing the door behind me. I stood on the porch for a long time, trying to understand how my life had gone from "let's pick out new curtains" to "your wife is running a multi-man circus act built on lies," in the span of 10 days. The drive back to my apartment was silent. No music, no calls, not even the hum of traffic. Just me and the realization that Ellery wasn't confused, or desperate, or impulsive. She was calculated. Like a chess player 10 moves ahead, already positioning the next version of her life before the current one even collapsed. When I got back, Marcia was sitting at the kitchen table, hunched over with her head in her hands. She looked up when I walked in, and before I could speak, she blurted, "I told him." I froze. "Told who?" "My husband," she whispered. "About Ellery. About the flights. About the second number." I couldn't keep pretending like I didn't know what she was doing. I dropped my keys on the counter and rubbed my face with both hands. "How did he take it?" She let out a weak laugh. "He asked me if I was jealous." "What?" Marcia nodded, eyes glassy. "He said, you've always hated that she had options. Admit it, Marsh, you wish you were the one men couldn't forget." I sat down slowly. "That's a lot." "Yeah," she muttered. "Tell me about it." We sat in silence for a minute. Then I pulled the envelope from my pocket and slid it toward her. "She left me this. She never intended to say goodbye face to face. She wanted me to read it after she was long gone." Marcia opened the envelope, scanned the note, and exhaled slowly. "She's not even sorry. Just clean and neat, like closing a browser tab." "She thinks I won't follow her," I said. "She doesn't know I've seen the passenger list." Marcia looked up, startled. You're not seriously thinking about. I'm not going to Portugal, I cut in. But I am going to talk to Logan. He's the only person left in this mess who hasn't spoken for himself. You think he'll tell you the truth? I don't know, I said. But I know he's been lied to. Just like me. Just like Emmett. He might think he's the exception. Maybe he even believes she loves him. Marcia stood up and walked to the window, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Logan's not smart, Lowell. He's emotional. He falls hard and fast, and he doesn't ask questions when he's being told what he wants to hear. Then he's exactly where I was 11 years ago. She turned around, face pained. Be careful. If Ellery finds out you're unraveling her plan from both ends. She already left, I said bitterly. She made that choice. The least I can do is clean up what's left of my name. I didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, I drove straight to Logan's apartment. I didn't call ahead. I didn't send a warning text. I just showed up. He answered in gym shorts and a t-shirt, looking half asleep and confused. It took him a second to register who I was. Then his face shifted from surprise to guilt in a blink. Lowell, man, look. Save it, I said, brushing past him into the apartment. He didn't try to stop me. I turned to face him in the hallway, heart racing. You think you know her? You think you're the endgame? He looked away. I've seen the itinerary, I continued. I've seen the other phone line. I've seen Emmett. That last name hit him like a slap. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. She played all of us, I said. You, me, him. Probably more we don't even know about. He finally spoke, his voice a whisper. She told me you were dangerous. That you'd hurt her if she tried to leave. My jaw clenched. I felt sick. She told me she regretted every day with me because I was too boring. We stared at each other for a moment, two broken men finally realizing we were never rivals, just casualties. I think she's setting up someone new, I said. I think this Portugal thing. It's not a retreat, it's a reset. Logan's face paled. What if she's not running away from us? I asked. What if she's running toward her next version? He sank onto the armrest of his couch, trembling. I thought I knew her, he said. I really did. So did I. And in that moment, sitting across from the man I once thought was my enemy, I understood the truth. Ellery wasn't escaping. She was building something. And neither of us had seen the blueprint. It's strange how quickly two men who once resented each other can become allies when they realize they were both just props in someone else's show. That's exactly what Logan and I were, background characters in the story Ellery told herself every time she decided to reinvent her life. I sat in his apartment for nearly an hour after confronting him. Neither of us had much left to argue about. He poured us both coffee, which neither of us drank. Instead, we sat across from each other like two guys at a support group neither of us signed up for. I met her at a photography show, Logan said quietly, staring down at the chipped mug in his hands. She said she was between jobs, just figuring herself out. I thought she was brilliant, worldly, like she'd seen things I couldn't even name. She probably has, I muttered. But none of it was real. She told me you were controlling, he added, his voice hollow. Said you'd never let her leave. That she was scared of you. I didn't respond. What was the point? Lies always sound more believable when they're told by someone who knows exactly what buttons to push. Logan rubbed his eyes. She had me wrapped around her finger. I booked that trip thinking it would be our fresh start. Portugal was supposed to be the beginning of our real life. I didn't even question why she didn't want to tell anyone. She probably told Emmett the same thing. Different version. Different promises. He looked up at me. Who the hell is Emmett? I hesitated. Then I explained everything. The second house. The letter. The photos. The backup phone. The note she never meant for me to find. And by the time I finished, Logan was leaning forward with both elbows on his knees, staring at the ground like he'd just seen a ghost. She told me he was dead, he said quietly. That she had a toxic ex she'd cut off forever. That he was dangerous. Same script, I said. Different audience. We sat there in silence for a long time. Then something unexpected happened. Logan stood up, walked into the other room, and came back holding a flash drive. She gave me this 3 weeks ago, he said, handing it over. Said it had all our travel plans and some documents for digital check-in. I never looked at it. My fingers curled around it like it was made of glass. You mind if I? He nodded. Be my guest. Back at my apartment, Marcia was still there, working on her laptop with headphones in. I slid the flash drive into my laptop and opened the contents. At first, it was exactly what Logan had said: travel documents, passport scans, hotel reservations. But then I saw a folder buried 3 levels deep, labeled Archive. Inside that folder were dozens of PDFs, some dating back nearly 6 years. Tax documents. Fake employment letters. Alternate names. Even a forged medical report indicating she had some chronic illness that would explain why she might disappear without notice. But that wasn't the worst of it. There was a document titled Exit Timeline, LQ. I opened it. It was a spreadsheet. Week by week, month by month, it detailed every phase of her plan. Breaking emotional ties. Creating friction. Moving money. Phasing out mutual friends. Creating stories to control the narrative. Establishing new identity details overseas. And, this one stopped my breath: engage backup emotional bridge, if primary fails. Marcia, reading over my shoulder now, asked the obvious question: what's LQ? I scrolled to the bottom of the spreadsheet where acronyms were explained. LQ equals Lowell Quinton. My full name. I wasn't even a person in her eyes. Just a 3-letter asset on her checklist. She hadn't left me. She had extracted herself from a structure she never intended to honor. This is sociopathic, Marcia whispered. This isn't just manipulation. This is something else entirely. I nodded slowly, unable to find words. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I still expected to feel anger. Rage. Some kind of fire. But what I felt was worse. I felt erased. Like I had existed only as a utility. A placeholder. A financial and emotional launchpad for her next life. I backed up the flash drive to 3 separate places and emailed copies to myself and Marcia. I didn't know what I would do with it, but I knew better than to keep something that explosive in just one place. As night fell, I sat alone in the dark with the only light coming from my laptop screen. And I realized something else: there was one name missing from all her files. One name she had carefully avoided documenting. One person not mentioned even once in her logs, her plans, her backups. Her sister. Ellery's younger sister, May, who she hadn't spoken to in almost 4 years. The last time they saw each other was at our anniversary party, where they'd had a private conversation that ended with Ellery slamming the bathroom door and May leaving in tears. I never knew what they argued about. But now, I needed to. Because if there was one person Ellery didn't account for, it was the only person who might still know how to stop her. And I had just found her number buried in an old email thread, waiting like a flare I had never lit. I hadn't spoken to May in over 3 years. Ellery always made sure of that. Every time I asked why her sister stopped coming to family events, Ellery would change the subject or say something vague like, "She's dealing with her own mess," or, "We're just too different." And because I was the kind of husband who tried not to pry too hard, because I trusted my wife, I let it go. I chalked it up to family drama I wasn't meant to understand. Looking back, I realized that's exactly what she wanted. Now, staring at May's number buried in a years-old forwarded invitation, I felt the kind of urgency you only get when you know there's one person left who might hold the missing piece of a devastating puzzle. I called. It rang 4 times before a voice answered, cautious and breathless. "Hello. May. It's Lowell." A pause. A sharp intake of breath. Then, "I was wondering how long it would take you." That stopped me cold. "You were expecting me?" Another pause. This one longer. "Not expecting. Just, not surprised." I sat down, heart thudding. "May, I know we haven't talked in years, and I know you and Ellery." She tried to make me disappear, too. Her voice was calm, but there was something inside it. Not anger. Not bitterness. Something heavier. Like she'd already mourned me long before I ever picked up the phone. "She told me you were sick," she continued. "That you were depressed, unstable. That you had paranoid delusions and would probably spiral if she ever left you." I couldn't breathe. "She said that?" "She told everyone that," May replied. "Family. Friends. Even a few old colleagues I bumped into once. It was all part of the groundwork. She's always done that, paint the person she's walking away from as defective. It makes her exit cleaner." I ran my hand over my face, dizzy. "She's leaving the country." I found the travel plans. The second phone. 2 lovers. A fake identity file. All of it. "She told me Portugal," May said softly. "That was her dream escape place. She used to joke it was where she'd go when she wanted to disappear without leaving a body behind." I didn't realize she meant it literally. I went to Emmett's place. Talked to Logan. Found everything she didn't mean to leave behind. May let out a shaky breath. "Then you already know more than I ever did. Why did she cut you off?" I asked. "Why did she shut you out?" There was a long silence. Then a rustle, like May was switching the phone to her other ear. "She stole money from me," she said. 6 years ago. $20,000 from an account our grandmother left me. She said she was going to use it to cover legal fees for a property dispute with one of her exes. It was a lie. I found out later she used it to build a new identity under a fake business name. When I confronted her, she threatened to say I was emotionally unstable and had attacked her during an argument. I walked away. My stomach twisted. She did something similar to me. Not with money, but with trust. She told people I was obsessive. That I was controlling. She was crafting her escape before I ever knew we were in danger. That's her pattern, May said. She builds the stage. Casts herself as the victim. Then pulls the curtain before anyone realizes the script was fake. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. May, listen. I don't know what she's planning next, but I found a spreadsheet, her timeline. She's scheduled to leave in 6 days. But there's a note at the bottom that says, final proof, backup deposit, Friday. I think she's picking something up. Something physical. Money maybe. Or documentation. You think she's still in town? I think she's tying off loose ends. And then May said something that chilled me. If that's true, then you're one of the loose ends. The line went quiet. I could hear my own breath, fast and shallow. What should I do? I asked, and I hated how weak I sounded. May answered without hesitation. Meet her. Let her think she's still in control. But record everything. Every word. Because when she runs, you're going to be the only one left with proof she was real. I don't want revenge, I whispered. I just want her to admit it. I want to see it in her eyes, that she did this on purpose. That I wasn't a mistake. I was a target. May didn't answer for a moment. Then, quietly, she'll never give you that. But maybe, you can take it. We agreed to talk again the next day. I hung up the phone, my fingers numb. Marcia walked in just as I was setting it down, holding 2 coffees and looking like she hadn't slept either. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I'm close." "Close to what?" "To the truth," I said, picking up the flash drive again. "And to her." Because in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I was going to see Ellery again. And this time, I wouldn't be the one walking away. I met Ellery at the cafe where we used to celebrate our anniversaries, the one with the scratched-up marble tables and the crooked chandelier she always said made the place feel imperfect enough to be charming. I chose it deliberately. I wanted her to be surrounded by the echoes of what she thought she'd erased. She walked in wearing oversized sunglasses and a calm expression, like someone attending a job interview she already knew she'd ace. When she spotted me, she smiled, but not with warmth. With control. "Lowell," she said, sliding into the seat across from me, her voice syrupy and steady. "You look better than I expected." "I get that a lot," I replied, tapping the small recorder in my pocket. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. She always underestimated me. That was her flaw. She didn't think I had it in me to be calm, strategic, or even curious. She thought I'd fall apart, again. "Let's skip the small talk," I said. "You're leaving in 6 days. I know about Portugal. I know about Logan. I know about Emmett. I know about the backup identity and the fake medical report." For a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. But it disappeared as fast as it came. "I see you've been busy," she said. "Though I'm surprised Emmett still talks. He was always the sentimental one. He gave me the note you wrote. The one you never planned to deliver until you were long gone." Her smile didn't falter, but her fingers tightened slightly around her cup. "You read it?" I did. And for a minute, I believed it. The version of you who regretted marrying the wrong man. Who was afraid of her own reflection. But then I saw the timeline. The asset list. The escape draft with my name reduced to 3 letters. I paused, letting the silence speak. "I was never a mistake, Ellery. I was a tool." She didn't deny it. She just looked out the window for a moment, then said, "You always wanted the truth. Well, now you have it. I wasn't built for stillness, Lowell. I wasn't built for routine. You were a beautiful pause. But I couldn't stay paused forever." I should have felt shattered hearing that. But instead, I felt nothing. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Not even relief. Just peace. Because in that moment, I understood something I never had before. She needed to run. But I didn't. And I wasn't broken. I was free. I stood up, leaving the recorder on the table. "You can keep the coffee. And the script. I'm done with both." She tilted her head, just slightly. "You're not going to stop me?" "No," I said, already walking away. "You're not my story anymore." 2 weeks later, Ellery's name popped up in a flagged report sent anonymously to multiple agencies. Financial fraud. Identity theft. Wire fraud. I have no idea who sent it. Maybe Emmett. Maybe Logan. Maybe her sister. Maybe me. And I don't care. Because for the first time in a long time, I'm not living in the wreckage of what she built. I'm writing something new. Thank you for following my story here on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever witnessed someone walk away from chaos and reclaim their peace, tell us about it in the comments. What's a moment from your life, or from history, that reminded you it's never too late to choose freedom over control? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the channel for more shocking, powerful, and human stories, only on Reddit Confessions.